Wylie Stateman is a sound designer who has been nominated for his role in sound recording for the Queens Gambit, the Netflix miniseries I'm at Noble and Gold Derby. And I wanted to ask you, Wylie, what's your favorite sound in the Queens Gambit?
Great question. For me, the favorite sound is always something related to music or something related, I guess, to scene transitions. We have a project here where Anya, who plays Beth, is a chess prodigy. And chess isn't normally what you would consider a sound-oriented sport. But the way she plays it in her head, the way she plays it, and often against her own inner demons and set to period music, it's just, for me, an amazing sort of palette of stuff that I really enjoy. Love period music. And we have quite a few really beautiful numbers, and we have a beautiful score from Carlos. And it's just, it's never one sound. You don't fall in love with a sound. You kind of, the best you can hope for is to fall in love with a project. And Queen's Gambit was a very rich environment in order to play in terms of sound.
Mm. You sort of said like a lot of this series is getting inside Anya's head. Obviously, sound plays a big part in that. What sort of got in your head while making this and working on this?
That's a good question too. I think probably I would say Scott Frank and Michelle. So, the role of the sound designer is to really work in support of the production and to kind of coordinate the efforts of the sound department. And so what's in my head is really what Scott Frank, the writer, director, producer, really wants to accomplish. And what Michelle needs moment to moment, because a big part of our job is to create a soundtrack in kind of in time for her to be developing these cuts and rhythms. And in order to make chess play interesting, there's a lot of really clever editorial work that was done by Michelle Tesoro. And the way she presents things to Scott, it's kind of like with this, the intention very well baked. Scott really likes to work, I guess, with what we call the rolling mix, which is that we're constantly finishing things. We're constantly prototyping ideas and cutting patterns and putting sound to that sort of thing, and giving that to him to sort of digest. Because a 7-part series is really an extensive length of time. And we found that the best way to accomplish a really interesting assembly and to get a really good understanding of the project is to kind of finish it as we go.
Yeah. Now, I think I said you were nominated for sound recording. I meant sound editing, the sound editing Emmy for this series. And I was wondering in terms of the sound editing, how does that role work? How do you approach that?
Well, for me, it's all in one. We're always editing, we're always re-recording, which is mixing. And the design of the overall piece is, it's first conceived from the script, and then it's sort of realized in production. And the production was largely done in Germany, in Berlin. And we can talk about that too, because the production was really well recorded, and we had a lot of great material from Roland Wanke in Germany. But the way sound editing works in my mind is that it works in conjunction to, picture editing for sure. But it's always about cutting and mixing and kind of rapidly prototyping the scene so that you understand the beats and rhythms. I don't know how to do one without the other. So while I'm nominated in the sound editing category, I'm really the sound designer for the project. And that means not that I've done anything other than guided a team of really creative, really talented artists and artisans through a process which has somewhat of a singular vision. And that vision, by the way, is very much the directors and the editors. And so the role of the editor, I think, is now very much sort of changing. It's a very holistic role. It begins at the script level, and it goes all the way until we've been localized in however many languages Netflix decides to go out in.
You've done you've been nominated for 9 Oscars for sound editing as well. Is it different sound editing a television series over 7 episodes than it is a motion picture, or is it just like longer of the same?
Yeah. Well, it is longer, but the process for me is the same. You fall in love with the material and you try and understand it. You try and give life to it in terms of sound, and you try and just make it flow and have these, beautiful interwoven transitions and handoffs between one scene and another. And you try and create pacing and explore intention through sound. And so those parts are all the same. Feature film is really just a truncated, long form.
Yeah. Do you look for with individual episodes, we're looking for a distinct sort of sound or feel to this episode that's unique from others, or are you trying to stay consistent over the course of the 7 episodes?
I think we look for opportunities where we can. The structure that we use in Queens Gambit is such that there's an opening for each episode that establishes a kind of a mood, and it asks a question, and then we spend a lot of the time in that episode just kind of advancing the story in I guess I was going to say leisurely way, but I don't think there's anything leisurely about filmmaking. It's all very highly intentioned. And so, I think with the Queen's Gambit, from beginning to end, we had an arc. We had an arc of a young girl who has a very traumatic event in her life and becomes an orphan, all the way to a very traumatic event in her life where she wins the World Chess Championship in Russia against a Russian grandmaster, which was no small feat. And so the character arc in this type of format really allows us, I think, more length. And that length we sort of fill with interesting story beats and great music and this beautiful actress. Anya moving to music is just a thing to behold. I mean, just loved sort of watching the Queen's Gambit and watching how the music and the sound, sort of worked together to keep the audience in the story and to keep it moving along. It covers 20 years of her life.
When you've got a performance that is just so captivating, like Anya's, do you is there this tension you have to place between letting her sort of the performance of that stamp, but also at the same time supporting her through the sound and through the music so that the best can get brought out?
Yeah, her performance is entirely generated by her and Scott on the set, by Steve, the cinematographer, who's capturing it from beautiful angles with great lighting. Her performance is about her makeup, her costume, so many things. But in the end, it's really her as an actor and our director, kind of getting together and just making love to the material. What we do with sound is we sort of, I guess, set it in motion to music, set it in motion to sound effects and sound design, and then mix it so that it's an experience that you can have in your living room or wearing headphones or on the train or on an airplane. And wherever the audience finds themselves, it's the role of the sound designer to make it really viable and effective in whatever format. So I think that the performance and the sort of the core of the acting and whatnot, that's generated on the set. But then it's rewritten in post-production, and the editor, Michelle, then structures those beats permanently. It's an amazing process, filmmaking. It's established in the writing, it's rewritten on the set during production, and then the final rewrite is in post-production, where the timings are shortened or lengthened, and the takes are selected and sort of stitched together in a way that completely changes the time. And then sound just really helps to heal the cuts. It helps to propel the story. It just becomes more like a garnish, I think, for the experience, but an important one. But we're stuck with the sound of the actor's voice, and as wonderful as it can be, and we're sort of fixing in the final mix the relationship between the dialogue, the music, the sound effects. And in some ways it's a little technical, and in many ways it's very creative. And there's a lot of wonderful creative people that make up the team that we assembled to finish a project in terms of sound.
Is there a particular scene that you're fond of, or that just you think all these elements came together really well?
Yeah, I'm constantly saying to myself, if I doubt something, I leave it out. I prefer a very minimalistic approach and a very uncluttered soundtrack. So, I believe that sound is more like a parade. Each thing that goes by you should be heard, and each thing should have its moment. And it shouldn't just, you should never really attempt to have every idea playing at once. And yet you can bring ideas fairly quickly by the audience, but it's more like a parade. And so my saying is, when in doubt, leave it out. But, mostly I'm constantly looking for clarity and for that core essence of what would be novel, a novel way to approach a particular moment in the film.
What was the most challenging scene that you had to cut or you had to sound edit for?
Yeah, well, Anya plays a lot of this game in her head, and she sort of has this superpower where she can go into this world and look at chess moves and sort of imagine how to strategically and aggressively play this game and against maybe superior players. But her ability to look into her head and to sort of mathematically or emotionally sort of calm herself to a state where she can figure out gameplay, was really challenging. And it starts with her in Methuen, when she's a young girl and she's first learning how to play, and she learns how the pieces move. The janitor in the basement of the orphanage teaches her the game. But then over time, she becomes a woman, and she's also working with this superpower that she has. And just, I think the most challenging thing is to present the music, in a way that really moves her and moves the period, and one thing hands off to the other. And when you have this sort of fantasy where you can go inside somebody's head, it's a very much a sound reliant creative opportunity. So I think for us, a lot of that was to be simple and to kind of sweep the audience along. But it's clever because it's all done often with music and score, and often with just supplemental pieces of sound design and little bits of Foley and production.
Yeah.
So the final chess match is really a thing of, it's the climax of this film, and it really is the climax of her superpower, to be able to go in her head and figure out that the last gambit, which is how she was going to beat this Russian grandmaster. He had tremendous support behind him, and she needed to rely on her own capabilities there. And she goes inside of herself and she pulls it off. But it's done in a way that's very satisfying. It's well staged. It's beautifully shot. There's a lot of stuff going for us there that really makes the Queen's Gambit end beautifully.
Yeah, no, very much so. Just you've not just had quite a long career, but also a very diverse career when you look at the different sort of films and series you've worked on. Things from sort of Planes, Trains and Automobiles to Home Alone to Kill Bill to there's just so many different genres of films and types of sort of sounds you've worked on, Wylie. What for you, is everything super different, or is there sort of some common theme or some common approach that you bring into all the things you've worked on over a sort of the time?
Yeah. Look, my career has been spent with writer, director, producers. Those are the kinds of filmmakers that appreciate the kind of work that I do for them. And so to go from early in my career, Ferris Bueller's Day Off to Born on the 4th of July, you would think is a very intense gear change. But it's really about making soundtracks for filmmakers, and filmmakers that have a deep understanding of the material and care deeply about how they want to present their work, whether it's their writing, their directing, and it's just an overall kind of concept that I have in terms of sound. And I make soundtracks for filmmakers, and so it's just been wonderful for me to be able to go from comedies to Quentin Tarantino films, from feature docudramas to made to series type work, with Netflix or Amazon. So I think working in entertainment, and particularly working in sound, you don't learn one lesson and then repeat. It's a constant discovery process. You fall in love with what you're working on, but you make films for filmmakers. And that's why I've always gravitated towards writer, director, producers. They know what they want, and they can appreciate the artisans that they gather to again and again make films. I mean, the Queen's Gambit is one of, I think, many outings that I've had with Scott Frank and Michelle, for that matter. And so getting a shorthand with those filmmakers is also very liberating. We spend most of our time working on the creative, not working on the political. And so it's just, it's a nice thing to have a career that spans so many different genres, because there's something to learn, Matt, in every genre that you touch. And so I've been lucky for that. Yeah.
I'm sure things you can learn from like one genre that you then carry over to another one.
Yeah, making people laugh or making people cry is, it's all about sort of learning to shape and force these emotional things out of material in terms of sound. And I feel lucky to have spent the last 40 years working at the top of my abilities. So, I have the strange distinction of having been nominated at least once or twice in every decade for the last 4 decades. So,
yeah,
that's interesting, and it gives me a lot to draw from. So.
Yeah, as I said, you've been nominated 9 times for Oscars. This is your 3rd Emmy nomination. Was there, growing up, is there a particular film or TV series where sort of the sound captivated you and made you want to sort of do this work that you do today, or you've done and got nominations for in the past sort of 4 decades?
Well, there's a grandfather that I'm very, very grateful for having given me a tape recorder as one of the first toys I can remember when very, very young age. In my sound people collect sound, and I have an incredible library and archive of recorded materials that spans my lifetime, including things from when I was 4 years old. My grandfather gave me a tape recorder, and I was fascinated by it, and I still am today. We don't use tape anymore, but the process is very much the same. It's having fun using your ears.
Yeah. You said it was part of what you do is sort of finding what you love about the project you're working on. What did you love about the Queen's Gambit?
Yeah. The first thing I loved was that I didn't really understand, when Scott said he wanted to make a film about a young woman chess prodigy, I thought, okay, prefer it about a World War I ace, but chess prodigy, let's take a deep dive into that. And so, falling in love with just her journey, her character arc, from very disturbing early, trauma to, acquiring her place in the world. I think it's a journey that the audience took with us, and it's why it's resonated so much during this period of time that we're living in. It's a journey, and it's overcoming, certain things and learning by certain experiences and being able to master something. I found the project really dynamic in so many ways. Like I said, the period music, just this actor, Anya, who's just beautiful to look at. In fact, when he said that he wanted to do a film about chess, I listened to what he was thinking, and then he showed me a picture of Anya, and Anya Taylor-Joy is a beautiful woman. And as soon as I saw her picture, I understood what Scott, was thinking, and that is to take this journey with this very unusual looking character and just let it rock.
Well, Wylie, thank you so much for talking with us today. All the best of luck at the Emmy Awards for, I'll get the category right this time, Best Sound Editing in a Limited Anthology Series, Movie or Special. All the best with that and for future work. And people watching this interview can go to goldderby.com, where you can make your own awards predictions and watch other interviews with awards contenders, including a lot of the Queens Gambit crew. Thanks, Wylie.
Thank you, man. Peace to you.
Yeah, peace to you as well.